Breach, Atlas, Eater of Worlds, no Scarabs. How can go. I started with just an Aegis Aurora shield, and it felt fine. I think if you have everything min-maxed without the Squire, it will feel fantastic. But with the Squire, I can get enough defense to feel okay without an Aegis. And at that point, I have pretty good defense and pretty incredible damage. So she's pretty fast, we have great damage, I still have explosions in the build, thanks to Animate Guardian. I might need to do an actual Breach Atlas map, just to really show this off, because this excels in Breach, I think. And you can see the explosions there are very nice, and they're silent. Oh. Is that actually an expensive one? 75C. Wow. It is expensive for a Scarab. That was with altars. Okay, I need a juicier map to show this off. Because this build does Breach incredibly well, so I want to show the explosions. Okay, 4 Spectres, 7 zombies, 8 zombies, good Animate Guardian, Carrion Golem. This is the Squire version, and it's still very tanky. Oh, Chayula Breach, off the bat, hell yeah. This is a good showcase. If I could get a boss here, that would also be great. Is that too much to ask for? It might be. But we can see the explosions are incredibly nice. And silent. I'll finish this map, then I can start the build guide. Also, this is a really, really weird looking cemetery. That's a fucked up layout. It's meant to be a box. What the fuck? Anyway, that's fucked up. Did I do the boss? No. And gone. Nice. Okay, so this is the outline for the build. I have the gear all listed out. I have the Animate Guardian gear listed. I have the Spectres listed. And I have an outline for how to make this build guide, finally, for once. Okay, so I'm going to start with gameplay, showing off the playstyle of the build. Then all the gear, including the gems, and the jewels. Then the tree, separate from the jewels. Then talk about the new ascendancy, the Necro reworks that happened. And then more gameplay at the end. Hopefully I'm not too blown out by this. I don't think there's any point talking about this from a League starter perspective, because this is not something you can start with. So you've got to at least have some of this ready to go. In one of my earlier highlight videos of this season, I showed what I started with. I started with just the weapon, just an Aegis Aurora, and I did start with a +5 Brass Dome. I think that's mandatory for this setup. Darkness Enthroned is pretty mandatory as well. That's the minimum, that's the budget, and then everything else I slowly pieced together bit by bit. So the first initial investment was about 2 Divines at the end of week 1 in Necropolis League. And by this point, at the end of month 1, I'm at about 40 Divines of investment. So it went from 2 to 40, and it's been a very gradual, very fun, very slow min-max process. And it's been quite fun to do, and I'm very, very happy with where this is. This is probably the best version of this build I've had so far. And I've enjoyed every version of this I've played. It's just every time I do it, it gets stronger. So I am definitely happy with the choices I've made, and I can talk about each of them and the intent behind them. So let me go through the list one by one. Dagger. The very first thing you'll buy for this build. The colors I like to use, if you just have the Fang, is red, red, blue. The blue should be minion damage, and the 2 reds should be melee splash and multi-strike. They help clear a lot better, and the minion damage helps front-load more damage because you're not ramping enough poison for it to be unbound ailments. So just minion damage, splash, multi-strike. Works incredibly well. It can do T14s by itself, with an Aegis. And then everything else is just min-max even more damage. Shield. I started with an Aegis Aurora, and eventually bought a Squire. Squire came down in price down to like 1 Divine this league, so that's not normal. I was looking at buying it for about 4 Divines, and then something happened and it went back up to 8, and now I think it's back at around 10. So you should probably get this later in the progression than I did, but I got this about halfway through progression, and it was not necessary. I think if you get every other piece of gear first, before the Squire, the damage will feel fine with an Aegis Aurora, and you'll have the tankiness of an Aegis. So leave Squire till nearly last on the upgrade list. The Squire, Amanamu's Gaze, and the Timeless Jewel are probably the last things to bother with. Okay, Helmet. I don't like using the Ancient Skull Helmet because it's another unique. It puts too much pressure on the rest of the build to fix things. And if you're not doing Ancient Skull, that opens up getting +2 minion gems, which helps with Spectres, helps with Animate Guardian, helps with everything else. Actually makes it feel like a minion build. So I should talk about what rolls are on the rare stuff. So I got T1 life, +2 minion gems. They're the most important things here. And then the rest fills out stats and res. I got Fizz taken as lightning, which is very good. And then the Eldritch Implicits on this are also just defensive Ellie taken as stuff. And it all works pretty well together. There is minion move speed and reservation efficiency you could get on Eldritch Implicits instead, but it's not necessary for me at this point. But that is something you could get instead. The minion movement speed is very, very noticeable. It's a great stat on this build. So yeah, the most important thing here is +2 all minion gems, then life, then res. Chaos res would be a good thing to get here, but it's a bit too expensive for what I have. Body armor, +5% brass dome. You don't need this to be 6-linked at all. This can absolutely start with... In fact, you don't even need links. If you just buy a 5% max res brass dome, doesn't matter what the armor is, doesn't matter if it's corrupted or not, if you just get a +5, and then make that 6-socketed, you can use that forever. The only reason the brass dome is a 6-link is because I have an Empower spread over Carrion Golem, Spectre, and AG. They all have Ellie Army, Minion Life, and Empower. So this 6-link is actually just 3 4-links. It's just an easy way to fit this all in. But yeah, most important thing is a +5% max res. Everything else doesn't matter. Eventually you can go for a good corrupted one with increased life or additional socketed gem levels to help even more. In fact, if you get +2 minion gems on this, you don't need Empower. So this could be replaced in like the very, very end game, depending on the corrupt you get. Okay, that's body, gloves, Gravebind. Nothing really important to mention as far as Gravebind goes. They're very cheap. They're about 20C, so they're more expensive than normal, like regular uniques, but I don't know, they're not that common. There's a Chaos Res roll, goes up to 29. So that's a good source of Chaos Res. So make sure you buy a max Chaos Res Gravebind, because getting Chaos Res is kind of hard, so that's a good source. Boots, Corpse Walker. I think it's pretty important to get a corrupted movement speed Corpse Walker. It's not too important, but it's like one of the only good corrupts you can get. I got the lowest level one because I think a 10% was way too expensive at the time. It's probably a lot cheaper now. But yeah, point being, this doesn't matter too much. Get whatever corrupt you can. I like getting movement speed. Okay, rings. Two very important stats to find on rings is minion movement speed and chaos res. If you can get life, if you can get stats, if you can get res, then well done. But for me, I really wanted a ring with minion movement speed, and I happened to find this one with damage taken recoup as life, and some minion damage, and a bit of res. I'm very happy with this one. The other one is not perfect. That intelligence, that energy shield, that rarity is kind of dead stats. Like this is a great opportunity to get dex or strength on a ring, but I didn't need it in this version. But early on, dex is probably a good idea. Chaos res is also important. Life is also important. You really want to get over 4k life on this build with the new leech stuff. So getting life on rings is very important. Unsets aren't completely necessary, but I needed at least one of them to fit everything else in. I could get a second one, I could make this more efficient, but getting move speed on this is just nice. Bone rings also have minion attack speed, which is just more damage in this build, so that's another thing to look out for. Rings pretty simple. Amulet. Amulet is a choice. So I started with the Impresence. The Despair is free as an aura, Blasphemy, Impresence. That also gives life and chaos res, so it's actually better for a very long time, until you can min-max things. Once you have the chaos res, you can drop in Presence and put an All's Uprising in. I get the Purity of Elements reservation one because it's the cheapest one out of all of the 50%, and it helps me fit in more auras. So it is better overall to use an All's Uprising, but in Presence is really hard to drop, so it's okay to keep that for a very long time. Actually, I'll just show you what I'm talking about, because I may as well. So in Presence is this amulet. Despair has no reservation if cast as an aura. This is amazing on the Occultist version, because it lets you use Despair as an aura for free, just to make sure everything around you is cursed, gets the most efficient explosions going off. So I dropped having Despair as an aura. It's kind of a waste to have that on Necro. It's a pretty good idea to have that on Occultist, but Necro not so much. And then when you get Null's Uprising, you can fit in 3 50% auras and Tempest Shield. Okay, Belt, Darkness Enthroned. Pretty simple. I like getting at least 95% effect. As close to 100 is better, but 95 is fine for my purposes. At least 90%. Don't use anything less than 90%. If you're in week 1, if you're in day 1, 2, or 3, buy at least a 90% effect, Darkness Enthroned. 95 is my breakpoint for that's fine, I'll stick with that. I could probably buy like a 99 at this point in the league, but I don't really need to or care. Flasks. Flasks are important, obviously, because the Writhing Jar exists. Doesn't matter what version you get, it really isn't very helpful. Although it is an instant life flask, so it does help. It's not a terrible thing to actually use on purpose. Plus, the playstyle of having worms out every now and then just helps keep things up and running. Another very important flask to get is Taste of Hate. Get a max roll, 15% fizz taken as cold, and put used on full on it, just to automate this incredibly good flask. I didn't think this would be a huge benefit, but chat convinced me to try it, and it's great. Especially with an Aegis, this is even better, because it's more max cold res, so it's even better damage reduction. Yeah, point being, Taste of Hate OP, use it. I have a Quartz Flask because I like phasing. I don't want to get body blocked by enemies. I could just, like, movement skill through them, but I prefer being able to run through them. Use when charge reaches full, gain 3 on a combo on any flask, keeps it up almost all the time while mapping. So if you're doing that, what I like to do with that is get an immunity to something. So in this case, I'm immune to all elemental ailments from Purity. So I got Bleed and Corrupted Blood immune on one, and Poison immune on the other. And that's a Granite and a Quartz Flask. So they're used on full, I gain charges when I'm hit, and they give me an immunity. They only last 4 seconds, but it turns off anything I have, like in terms of bleed or poison, and prevents me from being bled or poisoned in the first place, if they're active. So these two, combined with Purity, make me ailment immune, which is pretty great. It's not permanent, but as long as you're not greedy in boss fights, you can save a charge or two and make sure you're careful when you're doing a boss, and it still works fine. Then the Life Flask isn't anything important because I don't get bleed immune. I don't need much any. I could get Remove Curse on this, but I like getting instant recovery when on low life as like a panic option. It saved me quite a few times. Before I move on to all the jewels, I'm going to talk about all the skill gems I have first. So I'll go one by one based on this order again. So, gems. Let me talk about all of the gems. I'll start with the links for Arakaali's itself. So, Multi-Strike, Melee Splash, Unbound Ailments, Void Manipulation, Minion Damage, and Awaken Melee Physical Damage. This is a pure damage setup. You could put something like Minion Movement Speed in here to make it a bit more fast feeling, because it gives the spiders more movement speed, which is very noticeable. But it's not really worth it, because they move fast enough with what I have now. I've got some movement speed here. I've got some others in Ghastly Eye Jewels. So movement speed is fine, so I don't need it. It's a bit of a waste. So full damage links otherwise. You can copy this in PoB. I'm just explaining all of the gem links just to make sure things make sense and you don't get confused by whatever is being copied. Okay, Dagger and Shield, good. Helmet. So what's in the helmet? I have Malevolence, Determination, and Purity of Elements on an Enlightened 3. So that is pretty important. Getting an Enlightened 3 is a very late addition to the build. So before that, you could probably just put Charisma on Amulet Anoint. that should help carry it over. In the meantime, though, you could just drop Malevolence and add it in at the very end. Helmet. Okay, what's in the body? Okay, so I explained the body briefly. So, I really wanted to make an Animate Guardian really, really effective for this build, as well as make sure it never dies. In order to do that, getting it to level 25 is a good breakpoint for how much life it has, and having it on Minion Life, Elemental Army, and Empower helps it get there. It's also a level 21 by itself. That helps a lot. It doesn't need quality. So, Animate Guardian, Raise Spectre, and Summon Carrion Golem are all 21 in this. They're all linked with Minion Life, Elemental Army, and Empower 3. So they're all level 25. 25 is actually very important for Raise Spectre in particular, because I think level 25 is the breakpoint where it goes from maximum 2 to maximum 3. I don't want to take it off because it'll break everything and it'll be on the ground. Oh no, they're already broken anyway. Yeah, so see how this says maximum 2 Raise Spectres? Once this gets to level 25, it bumps up to 3. And then I have the Anoint for Death Attunement for a 4th one. So I'm fitting in all 4 of my preferred Spectres here. Technically only 3. I have 2 of the Frenzy Monkeys just for fun. But you could put all 4 of the best possible Spectre in here, 1 of each. I just have 2 of the Charge Monkeys for better consistent charge generation. So that is the Brass Dome Links. Gloves. What's in gloves? I have Raise Zombie and Feeding Frenzy on just a 2-link. I occasionally summon these just every now and then. So Feeding Frenzy, you can still taunt, I believe. So as long as you've got some taunt chance somewhere else in the build, zombies will be your meat shield distractions, and they'll give you Feeding Frenzy. And Feeding Frenzy is just very, very nice for this build. 10% minion movement speed, and 10% attack speed. And 10% more damage. So Feeding Frenzy is just something that's kind of mandatory for every minion build. So I like putting that on a fairly useless little zombie thing. They're just meat shields, they're just fun little guys to have on the team. That was those 2, and then Molten Shell cast when damage taken also in the gloves. Pretty normal there. Just 20-20 on each. 20% quality on Molten Shell. Don't need quality on cast when damage taken. Okay, what's in the boots? The boots have Despair, which is actually self-cast at this point. Could be on Blasphemy, but it's a waste of auras. So self-casting that for single target damage, even on a Squire, is pretty insane damage. It's quite nice. Okay, Whirling Blades. I need to talk about this. So, I have been a proponent of shield charge in this build for a long time. I've changed my mind on that finally. I watched the build guide that said using Whirling Blades on this is a much better idea, and they're right. It is zippier, it is faster overall, but the main benefit, the main difference, is shield charge has a fucked animation, where if you try to shield charge too close to your body, you will just smack the air and you won't actually move at all. But on this, I can target my feet, and I can still use it as a dodge. So Whirling Blades by itself is way better than shield charge, and it doesn't need to be linked with faster attacks to feel good. So I have forever changed my opinion. This build in particular needs Whirling Blades. It needs to be a bladed weapon. So you can't do it with a wand, unfortunately. So the only way you can do this on other minion builds is like Poison SRS if you're using the sword, or if you somehow make a minion build with a dagger. So Whirling Blades is my new best friend. Shield charge, friendship ended. And then Convocation is also in here, and Flesh Offering. Both of which are also self-cast. So technically this is a 3-button build for single target rotation, with Flask, Flesh Offering, and Curse, and then repositioning with Convocation. But 3 buttons for a boss, that's fine. 1 button for mapping, perfect. 2 buttons for rares, 3 buttons for bosses. That's pretty good. I like that setup. Okay, rings. There is a gem in the ring. Tempest Shield. So this is the last aura that I've squeezed in. Before this, you don't need Malevolence, and then you can easily fit in Tempest Shield. You can sacrifice some reservation. You can take out Enlighten. Actually, let me do that now. If I take off Malevolence... Wait, do I not even need Enlighten? Wait, I don't need Enlighten at all. Oh. Damn. Okay. Wait. Why was I doing that then? Oh, hang on. Without that, Impresence is probably why. So with Impresence and Enlighten, all three 50% auras fit. Tempest Shield doesn't, but like I said, you can sacrifice Malevolence for the sake of Tempest Shield. And then even without that... Okay, so Determination, Purity, and Tempest Shield works with just Impresence and no Enlighten. Point being, I am kind of overcompensating here, but I just discovered I don't actually need that Enlighten, which is kind of funny. Okay, Amulet, I explained. Belt, I explained. Flasks, I explained. Okay, now onto the fun part. Now we get to talk about all the jewels. So hang on, let me grab all these first. So I'll show all of them, and I will show where they go and why. So I'm going to put this in order of importance as well. Hardest thing to craft in all of this is the large cluster jewel. It is a bit of a barrier to entry. So you have to get an eye level 84 12 passive to get the most out of this. Because at 84, you get the powerful prefix, which is 35% increased effect of small nodes. So the reason for that is it bumps up the 3% minion attack and cast speed to 4. Because 35 is greater than 33, and 33% of 3 is 1. So 35 bumps the 3 up to 4. I'll show you what that actually looks like. So it turns into 4% attack and cast speed, which is behind my head. There you go. Also, the chaos damage on this is quite nice. So I made this myself, and I tried the fracturing orbit myself, but I failed. But it's still fine, so I decided to keep it. Because in this setup, it's giving me 40% attack speed and 40 chaos res. That's pretty goddamn good. You can craft this yourself as long as you buy a 12 passive minion damage, at least eye level 84. And then you can look for 35 effect, 3% attack and cast speed. I just ult and regaled for that. I think I regaled on chaos res, and then I exalted on armor, and then I fractured armor by accident. And I'm happy with this. I think buying this cost like 5 divines, maybe 6 because of the chaos res. If you got life, which is possible because it's a prefix, if you got life here instead of armor, that would bump it up to about 20 divines. So it depends on what budget you have, but my point is, you could make these, you could sell these, or you could just buy one that's already done. But buying a perfect one is very expensive. So I'm happy with this bad one that I made, because it's funny to think about how much I fucked that up. Okay, second jewel. The small reservation efficiency jewel I have with at least one of the 50% auras should get their reservation helper node on a small reservation cluster jewel as well. Just helps fit everything in. You could get a 3 passive here. You could get another one instead of another Ghastly Eye Jewel. Auras are very much up to whatever you want to fit in. I have Purity, I have Malevolence, I have Determination, I have Tempest Shield. You could do more with this, you could do less with that. Up to you. Okay, the fun part, Ghastly Eye Jewels. So, they don't all need to have poison chance. The thing with Arakaali's Fang is, the spiders use a skill called Viper Strike, and that has a 60% chance to poison by itself. So you only need to make up 40% out of the Ghastly Eye Jewels. Okay, the math is a bit weird, so let's assume the Darkness Enthroned is 100% increased effect, so doubled. So you already have 60%, so you only need to make up 40%, which means each jewel only needs to have 10% in the Darkness Enthroned for that 20 to become 40 for it to be 100. So as long as you get 2 poison chance Ghastly Eye Jewels that are more than 10% poison chance. So the most important ones to put in the Darkness Enthroned belt are the ones with poison chance. You don't need poison chance on any of the others, just the ones that go in the Darkness Enthroned. So that's 14, and that's 12. So 14 plus 12 is 26, and I have a 95% Darkness Enthroned, so times 1.95. What? 26 times 1.95 is 50%. So So I have a 110% chance to poison on Arakaalis. So it's overkill. So you either don't need a 95% effect belt, or you don't need that high of a poison chance. Point being, you'll be fine as long as you just get 2 poison chance jewels in the belt. And that'll get you to 100. That's a pretty important first step. The rest of the stats don't matter too much, but I am using these to fill out stats, as well as life, and I've tried to get minion attack speed and flat physical on all of them. You only need 5 to get the most out of Amanamu's gaze, but I have 6, just because they're good amount of... They're a good source of damage. They're kind of hard to say no to. Then I have other Ghastly Jewels I didn't end up using as well. Okay, so that's the large cluster, that's the small cluster. Amanamu's Gaze is a big upgrade for any poison minion build, because it just gives you 30% damage over time multiplier for minions. That's generic damage over time multi, so that could work for bleeding minions in the future, if they ever decide to make a bleeding minion thing viable. But for now, Amanamu's Gaze is just 30% more damage. So it is pretty big, but you don't need it until you've got all of your Ghastly Eye Jewels. So it is it's one of the last 3 things, one of the last big upgrades, because it's not cheap. It's been hovering around 10, 15, 20 divines this league. It's more expensive than normal, for some reason. It's actually a lot more expensive than the Squire and a Headhunter this league. Okay, so Ghastly Eyes with Poison Chance. The Poison Chance mod is eye level 60, so you can make these from white maps. You don't need anything high level to get these up and running. It also, by the way, they're a really good thing to sell, because you can alteration spam into into Poison Chance pretty reliably on Ghastly Eyes, and then you can sell them for like a divine each if you get Poison Chance and either flat Fizz or flat Chaos, or life. 12 passive cluster needs to be 84 to get 35% effect, and make sure it's there with 3% attack and cast speed. Amanamu is for damage. And now the fun part, the most annoying part, getting the right Timeless Jewel. The reason for this is the new Necromancer gives us minion damage leeched to me. 1% of damage dealt by your minions is leeched to you as life. Leeched to me as life means... I forget exactly how my chat helped explain it. When you have ES covering life, and you are leeching, you can't leech life if you have ES. Sorry, that's not a good way to explain it. So I'll just show what this does. So this turns any keystone, either of these, into Corrupted Soul, which is 50% of non-chaos damage taken bypasses energy shield. That sounds like a downside, but what that means is, and this will sound like a downside, but it means your life is constantly being chipped away at. But that's actually a good thing for this build, because it lets the leech that I'm getting from my minions help that like much more consistently, and it doesn't turn off a lot less often because it's constantly being damaged and I'm constantly leeching. If I had the instant leech with this, I'd be pretty goddamn immortal, or as long as I'm doing damage. And the max life is ES never hurts. So that's giving 1,000 ES. That's kind of crazy. And it's also helping me sustain with the leech a lot nicer. I got a really nice one. I'll show the calculator in a second, but I intentionally shopped for one that had Corrupted Soul and had this special Timeless Jewel node on it. So Cult of Chaos gives +1 max Chaos Res and some Chaos Res. In chat, someone gave us a calculator. So, Timeless Jewel calculator. It's a GitHub page. So you can enter in the keystone you want and where it is, and the other passives you want. So this one is a Glorious Vanity. Glorious Vanity. On Doriani to give Corrupted Soul. On that jewel socket. And then, so what you do at this point is you will go to the trade site. You will look for a Glorious Vanity. Glorious Vanity, Timeless Jewel. Search for Doriani. Bathe in the blood sacrifice in the name of Doriani. Yep. So they all say Doriani, they're all large, they're all Glorious Vanity. So what you do now is when you have these options open in trade. So this one is 7428, sacrificed in the name of Doriani. So I'm going to type in seed 7428, and it will show what actually happens here. It'll even show the changes made to the small ones. So this is where you'll start fishing for notables, like Chaos Res. See, it just highlighted that one there. I went for something that replaced Lord of the Dead, because it's only 1 point, and it wasn't actually anything additional, because I already went up that way to get it, and I was already over here for these anyway. So getting a Timeless Jewel that changes Lord of the Dead to something will be the most point-efficient way to do this. It does turn off whatever notable it is, so you got to make sure to check this before you buy it. So I'll just check another one as an example. So 7470 for this one. What does that do? 7470. So that turns this... Oh, that turns that into the minion one. So that's even better. So this one's even better because it doesn't require any additional points. Okay, and let me look for Chaos Res. Okay, so the Chaos Res went over there and down there. So this calculator lets you check what the ones in trade will actually give you before you put it in. I'll leave a link to this in the description. You gotta search for Glorious Vanity of Doriani, and then you type that number of bathed in blood sacrificed into the seed number here, and it'll show you what you can get. So make sure you double check before you buy it. This is probably the most annoying part of the build, but it's very worth it. Okay, so that's the Timeless Jewel explained. That's good. Animate Guardian gear. I've made videos on this before with this exact setup. So putting the Kingmaker together, let's estimate it at 2 divines. If you can't afford a Kingmaker, putting on a Dying Breath is also perfectly acceptable. It'll still function fine. You just won't get any of the Kingmaker's stuff like Cull and Fortify. Kingmaker is the best in slot. But until then, Dying Breath is fine. Leer cast is for damage, Gruthkul's Pelt is for life regen, Boots Windscream are for +1 curse, and Asenath's Gentle Touch are for temp chains on hit, and Asenath's Explosions. Because the Asenath's Explosions work fully, even if the Animate Guardian is the one applying it. So what happens is, the Animate Guardian will hit something, that thing will get cursed with temp chains. When that thing dies, the corpse on the ground will keep temp chains on it. Asenath makes it so that things that are near corpses with a curse explode when they die. So it's a bit clunky. So something needs to die first for it to be like the beacon on the ground, for it to give everything else the chance to explode. So things won't explode immediately, but because of how many spiders there are, because it's a damage over time build, things won't all die at the same time anyway. So you will very reliably get explosions happening. It might not happen immediately on the first kill of a pack, like that's how Occultist feels, so it's a bit different, but it's still explosions. It's only a 3% max life explosion, but it's as physical, so it's pretty good. And it's silent. There's no profane bloom screams in your ears. The Spectres I have are 2 Carnage Chieftains, just from the campaign. Pale Seraphim, I forget where to find that. I think it might be in T17 somewhere. And Arena Master comes from Drock's Conqueror maps. So until then, just the Carnage Chieftains are perfectly fine. They can give you full Frenzy sustain for you and minions, which is good damage, good speed, good stuff. I have 4 max Spectres because of the Anoint, because of level 25 Spectre, so I fit in all 3 of the fun ones. In fact, I could drop this Anoint for something else and just have 1 Carnage Chieftain, and that would still keep up Frenzy charges completely fine. Now I can explain the tree in a rough outline, like choices I made of where I went and why. I'll explain new Necro and how it feels, and then I'll end with more gameplay. As far as leveling goes, you can play any Necro build and transition into this once you get the gear. It takes a while, like I don't get the gear until like T10 maps anyway, so any Poison Necro, any Cold Zoomancer Necro, you could play DD, you could play any Necro build. You could play Occultist until you get to this point. You just need the gear. You don't need any like min-maxed tree stuff. You just need the gear to enable the build, and then you can transition into it. I think it is a clear choice to go with Necromancer instead of Arakaali's Fang Occultist from now on. But I'll explain the ascendancy later, actually. I need to explain the pathing of the tree. I don't think I really need to, but I'll explain the key points to think about when stretching the tree out. This was a bit far for me to path up to for point efficiency, so I'm okay with anointing +1 Spectre there. Not necessary though. Before I got a Timeless Jewel, I did have this life, so that's quite important to get over 4k life, which is a very important milestone for this build. It's not a breakpoint or anything, but getting 4k life, because we're leeching so much life, you want more life than anything. Like, I'm okay with having no ES if I could get 4,500 life. Getting 4,500 would actually be quite hard, but very, very worth it if you can. So my main defenses are Armour and Leech, and basically just being immune to everything and having high max res. Normal Necro tree, I think I leveled with SRS, just regular old hit-based SRS, then exploding SRS. Soul Rest is also a thing that I leveled with for a bit. Then I turned this on pretty early. I turned this on after 1 week of playing. So it's not a league starter, but it doesn't take much to get started. And then you can use the build to min-max itself, which is what I did. And it's how I like playing it. So I really wanted to get the minion defense wheel here, because I want to make sure Animate Guardian never dies. And part of that is getting this bleed immune thing, as well as getting more elemental res, because it needs to have max res, it needs to have life scaling, it needs to have this, bleed doesn't do extra damage. It's very handy, very good to have. The melding wheel out here gives a good amount of life and ES, so it's good to take, but take this late. Don't stretch out here until, you can reasonably afford it. There's a lot more important things to get first, like clusters, block stuff, Ghastly Eye Jewels, then life. But melding is very big for life, so don't neglect it. This jewel is also unnecessary. I've got the 5 needed for Amanamus, so this is an extra one. I'm at 98. So if we rewind 3, I'd probably take this off. So this is what I've added in at the very last stage of min-maxing and stretching the tree out. I went for more damage recoup as life for doing Simulacrum and high-tier content. And the fun thing about this is that recover 3 life on kill actually does work for me because of Gravebind. Only works on nearby kills, but still, if I'm standing in a pack, this will give me 3 life on kill. 3% life on kill, as well as all the leech, and as well as all the recoup. So I'm actually shockingly tanky on an Aegis, without an Aegis on this build. I'm shockingly tanky, and the new leech is a big part of that. I explained Corrupted Soul from the Timeless Jewel and Cult of Chaos instead of Lord of the Dead. Lost a life here, but that's okay, still at 4k. So 1, 2, 3, 4 Ghastlies on the tree, not including Amanamus, and then 2 in the belt. 1 additional. Okay, so 1 of these is unnecessary. So you could save 2 points here. And that would take me down to 96, which is much more reasonable. And then losing another 1 point somewhere like a Mastery, totally doable. So this build is completely min-maxable at 95. I have Glancing Blows, I have all the block stuff. Not all the block stuff, but I am 78, 75 attack and spell block. But that is with Glancing Blows. The main benefit of Glancing Blows is if you're using an Aegis, but I'm not using an Aegis. And I still think it's fine, because I'm using Divine Shield, and I have a healthy amount of ES. So with all the armor, with all the block, I have pretty good recovery, and I'm pretty tanky. I'm not a tank, but I'm not a glass cannon anymore, which is very nice for a Necro build, because I'm used to falling over way too quick. I think that's everything. Oh, this is a really good mastery here too. Keep an eye on this one. Recover ES over 1 second when you take physical damage from enemy hits. That's just a nice little ES recovery. If you're playing the Aegis version, this is even more noticeable. when you have like 2k ES, maybe more than that. I don't even have the minion defense wheel here, which could push it over the edge and make this thing immortal. But it hasn't died since I gave it a Kingmaker, and I've gone through T17 maps. I don't think it can die at this point, unless I try to kill it. Okay, I think that's everything. That's all the gear explained, that's the tree explained. So, last thing to explain before more gameplay is the new Necro rework that happened. So 2 things changed on Necro. Sorry, 3 things changed on Necro actually. The bottom middle 3 nodes changed a lot. So Mindless Aggression used to give generic damage, attack speed, and movement speed. Now it gives more max life and more damage. So that more life is helpful for keeping things alive, and the more damage is more damage. But if you're playing SRS, like Popcorn SRS, both of these are more damage, so that's cool. It's honestly kind of useless. Like, it's a very bad lab to, like, feel. It's a great node, but I honestly think it's less impactful than the previous version, but it is better numerically, so fuck it, it's fine. The thing is, it's hiding the new, real, big minion things. Like, Necro now has a much stronger playstyle because of these 2 things. So I'll talk about the Chaos thing first. So Unholy Might used to be gain 30% of Fizz as extra Chaos damage, I think for a duration, like after a kill, on kill. Now, Unholy Might is permanent, 100% of physical damage converted to Chaos. So this replaces the need for White Socket Triad grips. This gives us free Chaos damage minions. As long as your minion has a physical damage base, this makes it a Chaos damage minion. It even works for things like SRS, because some Enraging Spirits have 100% of Fizz converted to Fire, but this converts 100% of Fizz to Chaos. So if you have both of those at the same time on SRS, what happens is, it suddenly has 50% Fire and 50% Chaos. So this will work with making some Enraging Spirits poison viable early. It's not gonna be good until you get the high poison chance and the better damage and the 6 link and all that, but it's an option. It's a really nice option too. And for builds that already have like minions that do physical damage, this just enables them to be Chaos minions and poison chance stuff. And there's a chance to poison gem, so there's a lot you can do with this now, and I'm very happy with this. I'm doing an SSF character currently to like test how good this is, and boy does it work well. Okay, so that is new Chaos stuff. The other really, really juicy thing, and probably the most important thing about how new Necro works, is the new Bone Barrier. So it's got the additional Fizz reduction per minion up to 10%, that's normal. The new stuff, the amazing stuff, 1% of damage dealt by your minions is leeched to you as life. So 1% of the damage combined from all your minions is leeched to me as life. This is an insanely high amount of leech. They could nerf this down to 0.4 and it would still be incredible. If they nerf this down to 0.2, I will still use it. Because the amount of leech I get from this is... honestly, it's kept me alive more than anything else. So it's very, very good. And I'll show it in gameplay later. You'll see like just how much my life is moving up. I'll call it out when I'm in a map later, when my life is being hit. And I'll say I'm not using a flask, and you can just watch the life spring back up. It's kind of nutty. And that's not even all of it. So the last line on this new Bone Barrier is minions gain 40% of life as extra ES. This is also helping to keep Spectres and Golem and Guardian alive. So I think Necro is the new standard for this build. As long as you can work in an Animate Guardian for the explosions from Asenaths, it'll feel the same and it'll be numerically better than Occultist. Yes, it's missing Profane Bloom, which is lovely fun, but I think this is just straight up better now. Because we also get Commander of Darkness for the increased attack and cast speed, and the generic damage, and the all-res. And the all-res helps so much on this build, because this build is very unique heavy, so getting res is actually quite annoying. I think that's it. I think I'm done talking about the build, but I just remembered something. I'm actually going to show... I'm going to have a look at the other ideas that people have chosen for this build. Because I didn't realize how... Not controversial, but this is not a well-established build. There are so many ways people have chosen to play this, it's kind of weird. So I'm going to choose... I'm going to show a couple different looking... One's got the shade. So I just want you to see like all the different variations in gear here. That guy's got an Ashes and an Ancient Skull. He's wearing Asenaths. He's got the Offering Belt. This guy's CI? Yeah, this guy's gone CI with a good amount of ES and Aegis. This guy's probably insanely tanky. I like this idea. Okay, I don't want to assume anything, but some things here are not right. But he's got an Elegant Hubris. What? Okay. So, okay, this is exactly what I was saying. There are so many different ways to put this together. This guy's got a Grasping Mail for the global defense. I like that idea, actually. That's fun. He's wearing Asenath. He's got a Mage Blood. He's got Melding. Yeah, this is, like... There are much better versions than what I'm doing, but, like... This is, like, 150 Divines. Mine is pushing 40. I don't have a fucking Mage Blood. Yeah, this is a very normal one. This is very attainable. And very questionable, actually. 2 Life Flasks, 2 Quicksilver Flasks. I'm not here to judge people's builds, but I am here to show you that there's an incredible amount of variation and choice to even to this build, which I thought was very specific and niche, but people can do whatever the fuck they want. Like, this guy's got a Stasis Prison, and no Gravebind or Asenaths. So how is he summoning his shit? He's got Desecrate, Flesh Offering. Is he manually? Okay, he's got Divine Ire. Okay, so he's manually casting Desecrate and Divine Ire. What about this guy? He's got a Rare Chest, Unique Rings. Eternal Struggle is another option for Amulet. I've never used it. It's a thing that some people do. And, oh, hey, finally, someone else using Brass Dome. Good shit. Okay, so yeah, so his Brass Dome is 6 length to fit all his auras in on an Enlighten. That's another thing that I've done before, so that's a good option too. Oh wait, this guy's an Occultist, and he's playing with the Necro Unnatural Strength. Cool. Okay, this is a very nice one. I need to upload my POB to this, but I will do that. No? Fuck it, I'll do it now. There's literally no reason I can't do it now. Means I've got to open one of my least favorite programs. POB. New import me Necropolis level 98 Necro. Import tree, import skills. Generate POB share copy. And that's it. That should be everything I needed to do. Amazing. That was actually really quick and simple. I should have made that a build guide. Fuck. Maybe not a build guide, sorry. Maybe a export character guide. Okay, so what's my effective? I have better EHP than that guy. I have 127k. Good shit. And I have 80 all res, I have capped chaos res, block cap, only 24k armor, but fuck it, it's fine. Hell yeah. I'm happy with my stuff. Either way, I'll just provide this link in the build guide. Alright, now the fun part. We should find out, yeah. I'm not gonna link it. I made my own POB link, I'll just leave that in the description of the build. So, now I'm gonna round this out with more gameplay. If there are any questions, please ask it in YouTube comments and I'll answer it as soon as possible. This is the 5th time I've played this build. Like, successfully played the build, not just tried it. And I'm even happier this time around. Every time I play it, it gets a little bit better. And for some reason, Necro got buffed this league. It didn't need it, but it did. So, that's fun. Okay, T14 Alkengo breaches. Fun. I guess I should talk about the playstyle real quick. So, as far as summoning the spiders go, the boots are making corpses on the ground. So, as long as I'm walking, The boots say trigger corpse walk when equipped, meaning corpses spawn behind me as I'm walking. I need corpses present to turn into spiders. So the dagger says raise spiders on kill. And so that kill is for me. But if I'm wearing these gloves, nearby enemies killed count as being killed by me. So as long as my minions kill something, or they just die from some other way, I can make sure that this triggers every time. So as long as there are corpses near me, we use the worm flask, because the worms count as enemies. So that, and that work all together so that instead of having to kill things myself, instead of having to cast Desecrate, instead of having to use Divine Ire, all I need to do is press the flask once, and I get all my minions. And I think that's much nicer, playstyle-wise, than any other version. That's why I play this version of this build. And it is very fast, very good damage, very safe, and very fun. What else do you want? So I'll just zip through this, trying to think of what other questions people might ask. Second, I don't understand minion interactions in this game. Oh god, yes, how do you open a PoB? So I'm just going to provide the link to my path of building in the description of my YouTube video. So how you open that, that's a good question. For people who know how to use PoB, they have this and they can port this into PoB so they can criticize my build even further. But I don't think PoB is necessary. Anyone that tells you you need PoB is making a way too complicated build. So, point being, you have everything you need right here. You've got the tree, you've got all the items, you've got all the gems and links. You don't need anything else to put a build together. If you don't trust this, or if you don't understand how this works, then PoB won't help. It'll make it more confusing, actually. I think if a build feels fun to play, it's good enough for me. Exactly. I don't care about all the math going on behind the scenes. And part of the reason for that is because knowing what minions do, you can't really find out in-game. So you do actually need PoB for that. But instead of PoB, I decided to go by feel. And priority of upgrades if I started with no currency. Yeah, that's a hard one. So I guess I'll say that now, just to make it really clear. But this is not a League starter build. It is not reasonable to get this up and running with no investment. It doesn't take much to get started, but it's not something that you can do without certain unique items. So, I explained briefly, but the dagger, one of the unique shields, a brass dome, the gloves and boots, and the belt, and an impresence, are all kind of necessary to get it going. Not mandatory, not mandatory, not mandatory, mandatory, mandatory. Writhing Jar is mandatory. So the only mandatory things, like, the 4 things you need to start this build, and then you can min-max everything else, is the dagger, the gloves, the boots, and the flask. Technically, you don't even need the gloves and boots, you just need a way to make corpses and kill worms. So Divine Ire cast while channeling Desecrate can replace the gloves and boots. So in that case, all you actually need is the dagger and the flask. So those are the 2 mandatory items. Do the spiders summon benefit from minion damage modifiers? Yes, they do. So, okay, yeah, I can bring that up. So that's a good point to talk about. So what do the actual spiders have? So it's not a gem. Arakaali's Fang is its own built-in minion that only comes from this unique item. You literally can't get it anywhere else. So, they're called raise spiders in the wiki. And here, it explains, raise 2 spectral spiders from each nearby corpse that will attack your enemies with Viper Strike. Viper Strike is the skill that they use to attack. They don't use a basic attack, they use a whole skill. And that skill has 60% Fizz to Poison conversion, sorry, Fizz to Chaos conversion, and it's also got 60% natural poison chance. Another good thing to remember, which isn't talked about often enough, is, as far as I'm aware, apart from summon skitterbots, Arakaali's Fang is the only other immortal minion. So you don't have to worry about them at all in terms of scaling life. Relics die? Oh, okay. So, alright, so in that case, Arakaali's Fang and skitterbots are the only immortal minions. And these guys do damage. So that completely solves having to worry about them dying in maps, in high-tier content. So that's pretty great. Also, I just realized that this wiki page, I might leave this wiki page in my description for this build guide, because this also explains a bunch of how this build works in general. Like, oh, hey, there's another good point. Dual-wielding Arakaali's Fang does not give you 40 spiders. That's interesting. I'd never even considered that. Okay, yeah, another good thing that this wiki highlights is triggering this skill again does not resummon or refresh the duration of the spiders. So, what I do for this, to make this less annoying, is when you go into a boss fight, if you have spiders out and ready, and you've been running around with them for a while, you don't know what their duration is, so what I do is weapon swap them away, and then bring them all back to make sure they have the duration, which is currently 36 seconds. So 30 seconds isn't a lot. But when you're mapping, it's fine, because they resummon all the time from kills. But for a boss, that can be annoying. So 30 seconds of free summon at the start of a boss by weapon swapping and running in with fresh ones is the way to do it. Oh, okay, so apparently they do work with Infernal Legion, but there's no reason to do that. That's funny. Ray spiders can also become self-perpetuating to a degree because the spiders attack with a variant of Viper Strike, which gives them a chance to poison. Each enemies which die from a minion's poison or ignite are considered the player's kill for the purposes of mini-game mechanics. As such, if a summoned spider attacks and kills the enemy outright, then Ray Spider will not trigger. But if the spider poisons an enemy which then dies from the poison, Ray Spider will be triggered. Wait, what? Okay, I get around this by wearing Gravebind so that their regular hit kills do count. So this is not a good point to remember. That's kind of pointless to say, actually. With enough move speed, a player can travel within their spider pack to always be in proximity of their spider's kills, thus increasing likelihood of being around corpses. Yeah, I solved this. I solved these two things with the gloves and boots. There's some weird lines on this wiki page, but it's still helpful. It gives you more information than is otherwise ever present in this game. I'll have the POB for my character, I'll have the wiki page for spiders, I'll have the timeless jewel calculator, and that's probably all the links I need to provide. That'll be fine. So there's a technique called snapshotting, where I could swap to another Fang with Aegis on, and have it be tanky and still get all the benefits from the Aegis, or get the benefits from Squire while using an Aegis. I don't know if that still works, but if it does, that's definitely the method to completing Simulacrum, is snapshotting and weapon swapping to an Aegis. Oh yeah, I said earlier that you can see my life go up and down just from the leech. So let me stand still in front of a rare without pressing the life flask. Okay, I need to stand in front of something that can actually hurt me. Can I be hurt in this map? Like, at all? Like, okay, an Abyss probably won't even tickle. Wow, okay, this is... Yep. I think if I stand in front of the boss, it might die a bit too quick. I need something to actually hit me and take my life away. But everything dies too quick. Let me just stand still in the middle of packs. I'm just watching my life bar. I need something to hit me hard. Okay, here's a breach. If I stand in the middle of a breach, surely... Oh, it's Chayla. Oh, okay, yeah, see, my life... I'm taking damage. Some things tickle. I haven't hit a life flask in a while, by the way. Okay, let me stand on this. Oh, okay, I'm fine. Yeah, okay. This build's pretty good. Pretty tanky without an Aegis. Pretty goddamn nice. I can't think of anything I haven't explained, but please leave it in the comments if I forgot to explain something. And then, next league, when I make another build guide for this exact thing again, hopefully I can make it even better. Any last ideas for questions, Renee? Anything I could maybe help people with on YouTube before they ask? This is definitely going to be like a 40-minute long video, but as long as I put chapters in, that's fine for people on YouTube, I think. I mean, people seemed happy with the build I made last time, and that didn't cover everything. I watch my own content way too much, and I pick it apart way too much. So I'm just trying to make it better every time I make something. T14 done. Ooh, ghosted double bosses. Fun. And I can just stand there. Okay. I think that's it.